Let me quickly rope in Linda Gradstein, also joining us as a correspondent for Voice of America. She's currently in Jerusalem. Linda, thank you for joining us. Now, at this point, I'd like to ask you, what's the situation in Jerusalem? We're also hearing reports of people being stranded there.
Well, in Jerusalem, there were rockets yesterday. The biggest concern, I think, is much more, as the previous person said, about the situation around Gaza, and even more about the apparently dozens of Israelis who have been kidnapped and taken into Gaza. Hamas says they're being hidden in tunnels in Gaza, and that they're basically going to be used as human shields to prevent an Israeli attack on Gaza. We don't know the exact number, but they include women and children. And that's something, I mean, I've been covering this for 30 years. That's something that's completely unprecedented.
Right, and like you said, that seems to be the main issue here, the fact that the humanitarian impact is then going to be much larger. How do we control that? Is there an aspect that it can be controlled? Of course, we've seen what's happened in between Ukraine and Russia, and it would be terrible for that to repeat. Israel, of course, says that it has rescued some of these civilians that you mentioned, and also the IDF personnel who've been abducted. But on that term, is something being done?
So, well, no, because the ones who were rescued were Israelis who were trapped in towns inside southern Israel. The ones that were taken to Gaza, and Hamas has been broadcasting video of this, of civilians, several dozen civilians. I actually have a friend whose son is one of those. He was at a party in the forest. There was one of these big nature parties that the young people go to, and the Hamas terrorists came in with motorcycles and started just shooting in all directions. And then quite a few people were killed and then also captured. And her son is apparently one of those captured. So when they say that they have released some of the hostages, those are places in southern Israel. There was a police station in a town right next to Gaza called Sderot that was overrun by Hamas, and that Israel took back during the night and killed 10 of the Hamas gunmen there. But as far as I know, there hasn't been anything. And the question again is whether Israel is going to send ground forces into Gaza. And Gaza is incredibly densely populated. And as soon as you start sending in ground forces and having that kind of fighting, or even massive airstrikes, you're talking about large numbers of casualties of Palestinians in Gaza as well. But the fact that 300 Israelis were killed and a couple of thousand wounded, and the death toll is just expected to rise, is something that I think people are still haven't quite wrapped their head around what it means. There's been a massive call-up of reserves. Anybody who was in a fighting unit has been called up, and it seems that Israel is preparing for a ground invasion.
Right. Now, Linda, this was a surprise attack, as reports are calling it, but could it have been avoided, or could the impact that it had been mitigated had there been better intel for Israel?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's kind of ironic because it's almost exactly to the day 50 years since the Yom Kippur War, which was also a surprise, and that was considered the biggest intelligence failure in Israeli history. And now a lot of people are saying this is the biggest intelligence failure. It was a holiday and the Jewish Sabbath. A lot of army bases were down to a skeleton crew. It was the last of a month long of Jewish holidays, which all come in the fall. And this was the last day. And so there were skeleton staffs, but this attack was obviously incredibly well planned. I'm seeing the pictures of, the Israeli hostages, and you're talking about an attack that would have taken months and months to plan. And it also seems that the Iron Dome missile system wasn't completely functional. And so all of that, it's really kind of hard to understand exactly what happened. And I'm sure that's something that, Israel is going to be looking at for once the fighting ends. But it's, everybody is kind of bracing for a very harsh Israeli response.